I'm Bridget Owens, and you're listening to the Waxing Soul podcast. Join me on an exploration of mindful, modern magic, a journey towards deeper understanding of self and transformative individual spirituality. It's November 26th, 2020, and on today's episode, we'll be discussing the nature of our power moods, why our emotional and mental states are so influential on our ability to function, and how we can do mood magic on ourselves. Are you ready to grow your soul? It's Thanksgiving, and I thought about doing an episode on gratitude to be, topical, but that idea didn't seem particularly inspiring to me, so here we are, talking about our moods instead, which I think is a pretty topical thing, actually, right now that we're into what we like to call the Burr months, which have all of what I think are the best holidays in them, but this time of year can be frustrating and depressing and otherwise emotionally tricky depending on the person. And especially this year, I'm sure it's triggering some extra stuff for people. So, but instead of talking about the negative emotions and bad moods, I want to talk about power moods. These are the frame of mind or the emotional state that you get into where you feel extra inspired, extra motivated, extra happy, extra optimistic, whatever it is that makes you really feel lifted up and powerful in a spiritual sense. It's that state of mind or mood you get into where things that you otherwise find difficult become much easier. So for me, I work as a freelancer, so I have to manage my productivity. And I realized a long time ago that I have, kind of low moods and mindsets that happen where I lack motivation or kind of the ability to do more than just the sort of tasks I have to do. And after doing, my shadow work and paying really close attention to when these moods happened and what set them off, I realized that for me, it usually comes down to feeling like I'm behind or failing at something. Not too long ago, I had a week where I felt I was constantly behind. I was having a hard time motivating myself to stay focused and stay on task and catch up. And the things that I was most behind on were actually the things that I dragged my feet on the most, those and the things that I felt that I'd made mistakes on before. So later in the week, I finally caught up on all of those things that I'd needed to do, other than the stuff that I was dragging my feet on, and plus a couple of little side projects that had popped up. And in doing that, I got a bunch of positive feedback on the stuff that I had gotten done. And that feedback, that reassurance that I was appreciated, that I was doing good work, sort of put me in my power mood. And I felt valued and competent. And suddenly I found it really easy to do all of that stuff that I'd been putting off. And it was easy to do extra unrelated stuff. And I started thinking about the fact that we spend a lot of emotional energy focused on how to deal with our negative moods and feelings, and we work really hard at getting to that good meditative Zen headspace, but there's not so much focus on how to get not just into a zone, not just to be able to do things, but to really be in a power mood. And it's more than just getting pumped up or excited about things. For me, it's that feeling of kind of empowering relief, it's not just energized, it's empowered and motivated. So I got to thinking about how we can not just overcome the down feeling, but how we can trigger that motivated, empowered power mood when it's not the flip side of a down mood. And this is important because once you recognize your power mood, you can figure out how to trigger that emotional state in yourself. So especially when we're talking about magic and spiritual workings, knowing what your power mood is, where it comes from, what triggers it, is really the basis for being able to create a ritual or a meditation or whatever is your go-to method for creating change in your emotional and spiritual state. Because that's the thing, this is really a spiritual issue. And if you haven't listened to my past episodes or read much of my writings, spirituality is something I talk about in something of an alchemical sense. It's not a religious entity or a religious thing, but it's all the things that have to do with our spirit, our thoughts and feelings and choices and actions. So impacting our moods, our emotional states, being able not just to cope, but to get ourselves to the state of mind and energetic state we want or need to be in. That's really one of the core aspects of spirituality and, magic. Because it may sound kind of simple, it may sound kind of naively simplistic to say that it's possible to magically alter our mood, to shift ourselves into a power mood, into courage and motivation and whatever makes up whatever your power mood really is. And I mean, it is a pretty simple concept. The execution in the end is pretty simple, but the stuff in the middle, it's that stuff that isn't simple. It's, that hacking of our subconscious part. And I want to be really clear here that I'm not saying that we can just magically overcome mental health challenges at will. Magic exists, but brain chemistry and such also is real. So, magic is no substitute for mental health care. But day to day, when we feel, bored or distracted or just not in the mood to really focus our will on things, but we want to, getting from the I wish I felt more whatever to, there's nothing going to stand in my way kind of mood is well within the capability of magic. And it's something we all can benefit from. When it comes down to it, our day-to-day moods are just emotional energy, and energy can be transformed and worked with. And really, I know a lot of people approach magic as a way to kind of impact external things in their life, bring things in, banish things. But the real power of magic is in affecting us on a subconscious and emotional and energetic level. And I 100% believe that that's the way magic works. Anyway, it's not some external power in the universe looking down on us and deciding whether we should get what we ask for and how it should come to us. It's really in the transformation and, hacking of our own subconscious, our deep soul energies to kind of shape reality around us. Now, I don't want to get into, really deeply into some kind of philosophical tangent. I'm prone to those, but we have the entire life of the podcast for that. So, but here's the thing. Emotional energy is really our soul stuff coming out in spirit form. There are soul deep beliefs that cause spirit energy reactions, and that's what emotional energy is really. And when we have those down moods, those emotional states that keep us from really doing and acting and being the way we wish we could, it comes from deep self-beliefs which take a lot of shadow work to really root out and change. In the meantime, though, it's totally possible to find workarounds, magical workarounds. So I have done therapy in my life, and the root of, what I'm talking about here has come up in dealing with therapists. And I remember a conversation I had with one psychologist I was working with after we'd done some cognitive behavioral therapy to break some thought patterns that were manifesting in my life in some really irritating ways. And, I'd done all the work on my beliefs and figuring out where they came from and stuff. But one day I had to ask her, it's great that we've dug down to stuff I decided was true about the world because of how I was raised and things that happened to me and everything. And I know that when those thoughts come up, why I'm thinking that way, and I can shift out of that mindset and stuff. But when it comes down to it, when I'm in certain emotional states, and maybe they're better now than they were in the past, but there's still practical ramifications for those emotional states. Even if I'm working through this stuff, being distracted by those thoughts and, worn out if I've been crying or stuck in some kind of energetic state, even though I know it's not logical and whatever, knowing the roots of those things are from past trauma and thought patterns that I'm changing doesn't actually get me to a better energetic state. It's just this long road of those things being less bad as time goes by. So how do I shift things in the moment? It's great that we've done the work, but how do I then pull myself out of it so that I function in the moment? And she didn't really have good answers for me at the time. So, well, if you're distracted and low energy and having trouble staying on task, maybe you should try scheduling your time. Thanks. Super not helpful. So when I got to thinking about it, I realized that I know pretty clearly what triggers the opposite moods for me, right? When I do feel my most motivated and energetic and inspired and all that. And And that's when I feel appreciated, when I'm proud of something I've done, when I'm excited about an idea, when there's something coming up that I'm looking forward to, when I feel like I'm supported, like people care about me. It's stuff like that. And in a lot of ways, it's that simple. If I can use personal ritual and sensory inputs and other magical tricks to kind of hack my subconscious to make myself focus on those things rather than on whatever is dragging me down, then I can put myself into the power mood when I need to be there. It's not a matter of trying to entice good luck to come my way or banish the things that are causing me to be in a funk, which is what I think a lot of us do, or how we think when it comes to what's causing us distress in life. We look at what's causing us to feel that way, which is often misplaced. And we look towards what we wish things were like instead, which closes us off to other possibilities, like I talked about a few weeks ago. And in the moment, neither way of thinking does much of anything at all to get us to the mindset and the energetic state where we're lifted out of that stuff. It leaves us waiting for our lives to change or waiting out the process of healing. And there's really something to be said for, in the meantime, shifting how we feel. So we take some of that power back, taking control of our energy in the moment, even if there are external things we can't change, and not in an avoidant way, not pretending that things aren't the way they are. This is different from that. What this comes down to is focusing on the link between how the way we feel changes how we act, instead of focusing on how things around us make us feel. All right, now let's dig into the how. Now, first off, the thing about magic is that it really works best if you put yourself into it. Create your own rituals, write your own spells, do what makes sense for you. And in this case, it's super important for this to be something that you create, because we're all different when it comes to what our power moods look like and what causes them. So there are a few things to think about when it comes to actually putting this into magical practice. And the first one is really thinking about what causes you to go into a power mood. What is it in your life that makes you feel, not just good, not just happy? This isn't happiness really, but what makes you feel really capable? What makes you not drag your feet about doing things that sometimes can be not your super favorite thing? What is it that makes you feel optimistic and empowered? Like for me, I think about productivity and creativity and confidence, but I look at people around me and, for instance, those up moods which make my, introverted wife actually be excited to go out, even in a crowd, or to talk to a bunch of people. It's that kind of energetic state, the kind where you feel like you can overcome things that are sometimes big mountains to climb over. And once you've figured out what those things are, then the next thing to think about is how you can make it as if those things are sort of magically happening in your current moment. And here's where things get creative. So for instance, for me, external validation is kind of a big deal. There's very little that makes me feel more empowered than being recognized in some way for doing something well or accomplishing something, and not just, you're a really great person and I like you thing, but like, you solved this problem, that's really great, or that turned out even better than I expected it to, or, I can always count on you to be able to achieve this particular thing that's important to me. It's that kind of validation. So, I know it doesn't work to like beg people around me for validation, right? and it doesn't work to tell myself that my need for validation is rooted in crap from childhood and that I need to shift my mindset around, my inherent value or whatever. That's kind of like telling yourself not to listen to music that makes you happy, because real happiness comes from within, But what I can do is, and it's not like those things aren't true, but what I can do is create some kind of personal ritual centered around getting that kind of validation from my ancestors or the universe or whatever it is that, that fits in the moment or fits what you do. I could, for instance, do a spell to summon that kind of positive reinforcement, or I could make an altar to myself as the, goddess of spreadsheets or whatever, and leave myself offerings. And I could take an object or a crystal or a little figure or something and, imbue it with an energy or, whose only purpose is to tell me I'm awesome. I could ceremonially do something that I know I'm super good at in honor of some higher power and bask in the spiritual knowledge that my skills are appreciated. The point is not to think of whatever your power mood is, whether it's courage or motivation or whatever, as some external thing, some external energy, which comes from somewhere else that you either have to work for or deserve or luck into. Because it isn't really that. It's a reaction. It's from within. So it's not about doing magic to tap into some external source of those things. It's about doing magic to pull those things out of yourself, to trigger that chain reaction that turns, that flips that switch inside. And it isn't, and I think this is super important to this whole thing. It is not a failing or something bad if you can't just shift a thought or think the right motivational words and be super into your power mood all the time. Nobody is meant to be up and feeling powerful all the damn time. We're human. We have a variety of moods. We sometimes don't, need to feel empowered and revved up. Sometimes we need to feel our deeper feelings. Sometimes we need to unplug and be still and lazy. Whatever. No matter what, the positivity only kind of crowd suggests, nobody is able to just not ever deal with so-called negative stuff or negative feelings and keep their energies high up, all the time and just switch off their down moods whenever they come up. That whole idea is, it's not just a fantasy, it's unhealthy. But staying stuck in a funk isn't healthy either, and it's not practical and it's not workable in the long term. So, of course, it wouldn't be an episode of Waxing Soul without a downloadable resource or something. So what I made this time was a little idea sheet that I hope will trigger some creativity to help you, figure out how to do your own mood magic on yourself. And as always, you can download that resource at bridgetowens.com/podcast. All the downloadable resources from recent episodes are there, and I would absolutely love to hear. There's a link there to anchor.fm where you can leave voice messages for me, and I would absolutely love to hear what kind of ideas you come up with on your own, how this works for you, what you try, and what you find out. Thank you so much for listening. Look for a new episode of Waxing Soul every Thursday. You can find us on bridgetowens.com/podcast and wherever you usually listen to podcasts. If you can't find us at your usual podcast spot, drop a message to bridget@bridgetowens.com. All materials and resources, except the music, are copyright Bridget Owens. Music is Dreamcatcher by Kevin MacLeod, used under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International. Find out more at bridgetowens.com/podcast. Many, many thanks to my readers, listeners, friends, mentors, inspirations, and my family. None of this, of course, happens in a bubble. Until next week, blessed be and be good to yourself.